I'm Peggy Semingson. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, and I specialize in literacy studies. I'm in the College of Education, and I train pre-service and in-service teachers how to teach children to read and write. I also participate in my community of Arlington, where I live, in service projects that involve literacy and education, and I also work with English language learners in bilingual communities. I'm really interested in community, and so I chose to respond to Chapter 4. I'm going to first talk about some of the big ideas in this chapter. Our author gives us many ideas and suggestions of what to do to improve community, to keep things local. And coming from the city of Austin, we had a catchphrase that you might know. It's called "Keep Austin Weird." And at first I thought that meant weird as in strange and different, but what it meant was consuming locally and producing locally, and I think that's a great idea and one that he develops in this chapter. I'd like to talk about two ideas that he develops, and I think they serve as good metaphors or frameworks to really help us understand what that means. Instead of looking at this chapter as a to-do list, we should think broadly and think of the big ideas. So I'm going to talk about two right now. In Chapter 4, he advocates for a changing paradigm where we're working in collaborative ways. He makes the point that we need to differentiate between what we want and what we need. And one example that I think we can use as a metaphor is the farmer's market, so that we produce locally and we are exchanging, almost in a sense bartering, what we need. And as we produce, we're thinking in terms of others, we're being other-minded, and I think that's a totally different way of thinking instead of consuming as an individual. Returning to the farmer's market. This is a good metaphor, I think, that we can think of as ourselves working together. It's not just the lone individual with hippie tendencies, for example, but it's a really powerful metaphor. So to sum up, I would just like to say that I think two of those examples from Chapter 4 will help serve you well in thinking of a different paradigm, a whole different shift in thinking, rather than as a list of things we need or ought to do. I think they're suggestions that we can take from and consider as a changing paradigm. So I like to pull quotes that are powerful for me. That's something you might do as you mark your text and consider what speaks to you. On page 158, he says, "Most progress toward local economies will probably arise not so much from grand visions as from slow modifications." We've talked about food, about radio, about energy, but the same kind of analysis can be done for almost any commodity. I think that's important, that we see our shift and changes in small steps. So that's what I think. We want to know what you think.